I like turmoil. Like we could talk about the Caps or the Leafs and how good they're doing.
Yeah, but who's hurting though?
But there's two teams out there that it feels like, what the hell is going on? Vancouver, who's still hanging in there, and the Rangers, a team that I think I actually have on one of my bets winning the Stanley Cup. This team goes to the semifinals last year. They're one of the best. President's Trophy, and the Canucks. Everyone thinks they're going to. Last year was the blip. No, now they're going to build off that. How are you dealing with these if you're in charge of those two organizations, or are they to blame? Like, is Drury to have some blame for this?
I think Chris has to have some blame with this because, there is. Okay, let's just all go separately on one, because the two of them they're chaos, but I think they're for different reasons. Like that's a difference. Like Vancouver has had chaos. Because even if you just look at it, I always say the spine of the team. The goalie has this injury that he's coming back from in the playoffs against Edmonton, and then he's not available to start the season. They are damn lucky that they signed Kevin Lankinen. Like, I mean, that's found money, because Demko's an elite goaltender, in my opinion. I don't know if he's ever going to be healthy again. I hope he is, and because I think the league's better with great players in it. So there's the Demko situation that was crazy. J.T. Miller takes a leave of absence, and you're like, okay, this is personal. Your hope is all right. This is personal. Like, let's not mess with personal lives. But I look at Vancouver, and I love Rick Tocchet as a coach. I think they made some shrewd moves in the offseason to try and add. But I mean, I look at it, I'm like, okay, something's not right there. Like you're just, and then it comes out, okay, it's Pettersson and Miller that don't like each other. And
how does that even get out?
I don't even know. That's the crazy part for me. And I defend it because our 04 team, I think for the most part, everyone loved each other. And we had 23, 25 guys that got along and liked each other and all that. But you think in today's world, you put 25 people, you're not going to love everybody in that dressing room. You just don't get along with them from different backgrounds, different thought process. Like you're not going to be best friends with all of them. But the one thing that's always been constant when it comes to pro sports or any even businesses or anything, even if there's dysfunction, you be pros and you play hard. And regardless of what happens, you can hate the guy across from you, but he's your teammate when you go out on the ice. And something is weird in Vancouver where I don't know if they feel like they felt that they could have handled it internally, and it just hasn't been handled. Now it's spilled over and it's awkward. Like that's the one word when I think of the Vancouver Canucks, I'm watching and I'm watching Miller. And Miller's a hell of a player. Yeah. And then, Pettersson, when Miller wasn't there, Pettersson stepped up. And then the two of them together, they're not having great seasons when they're both together. It's just a weird thing. To me, it's just awkward because a guy like Rick Tocchet would look at them and go, get your act together because you're playing for me and that's it. So the fact that they're still in that playoff spot area is miraculous for me because they got good players. That's the one thing. So I'm going to park Vancouver and go over to the Rangers. Something is off there, like completely off. Like, I don't know because Jacob Trouba was the problem. Well, traded him, they go south. And then Capo Caco, you trade him for a third and a fifth. Okay. But is your team better? Like, are you better by subtraction? Like, that's the thing that hasn't been the case. And now you've got Shesterkin that's injured. I watched them play the other day. The one thing that I could pinpoint is their stars had no emotion. Panarin, his hair was dry. It drives me nuts when a guy makes $10.5 million and he's floating around on the wing and his hair is dry. That was always my argument with William Nylander in Toronto. Like the guy's got gorgeous hair, dry hair because it, didn't hit anybody, didn't get hit, didn't. I look at Panarin, I look at Zibanejad's not having a great season. Chris Kreider has 2 assists, 13 goals and 2 assists. Like something is seriously fractured within that room. So, okay, so what do you do as a manager? You have a couple trades. Why is Peter Laviolette still coaching? I think he's a fantastic coach, but at some point,
give him a reset.
Yeah, like what's going on here? Like that's the Rangers perplexes me more because Vancouver, you can see injury and some some public stuff now. The Rangers, yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on there.
They were in the semifinals last year, and everyone's raving about how great everything is, and we're the best. President's Trophy, like
they're great on paper. It's a huge.
Here's the one thing that I can speak to. For the 6 weeks I played for that organization in 2004 when I got traded for Chris Simon.
Mm-hmm.
That team, you need to have a special team because the minute you leave the rink, nobody hangs out. You're in New York City. And one guy lived in New Jersey, the other guy lives upper that that team was it's like there's a business there. Like you play, everybody's their own little corporation. I never felt like that in other organizations. When I got to New York, and believe me, and I don't have that great of a pulse. I was there 6 weeks, and they were flushing people down the toilet. They brought, our starting
last year,
our starting defensive core was Chris McAllister and Dale Purington because they had traded Leach to Toronto.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean. Barnaby went, like there was just people getting traded left and right. And it was Messier's swan song, and he was done. He didn't even show up for the last game. It was a road game. He's like, I'm done. I'm not playing that one. So at the end of the day, I can't speak to what's going on, but I know that organization, it's always a struggle just to be tight anyways, because of the semantics of the whole organization. You practice in Rye, you play at MSG. It's a tough battle anyways.
Yeah. And it's a great point. Like if you're in Calgary, it's easy to get guys together for a pregame meal. If you're in Manhattan, it's a nightmare. Someone lives in Long Island. Some guy's got an apartment right by MSG. Another guy's coming in from Jersey. Like it's totally different ball of wax for sure. With Vancouver, I'm now fascinated because you could always say, well, we didn't have Demko. Well, Hronik's been out for ages. Quinn Hughes is now hurt. Oh, Pettersson's hurt. Here's the status. They got Hronik on a conditioning stint in Abbotsford. They're not going to play him. They're just practicing him an hour from their rink, right? He's going to be back right away. Yeah. Hughes is back. He looked great the last couple of games. Probably should win a Norris good. Pettersson's returned from injury. Demko is returned. They just reassigned Shilovs to the American League, which tells you Demko's ready to start playing again. It was a back issue, not that weird muscle in his knee. Like when they're healthy, now all eyes are on Pettersson and Miller. There's no more excuses here. Everyone knows it's a good coach. It's the roster that the GM built. Will they add a D? Probably. But right now, all eyes are on those two guys that don't see the world the same way.
Well, sorry. I know you're.
Go ahead.
To add to that, you've been a team guy. You've played on various teams. You've played on tight teams. You've played on teams that aren't together. Have you played in a situation where two guys two key cogs in the wheel, dislike each other? Again, we're repeating what we're hearing. None of us are in that room, but the fact that it's out there, it's got to be pretty obvious. And does Tocchet, Foot, those guys that are there have the ability to bring those guys together? Or is this we got to cut bait with someone and move on?
Well, that's the crazy part is, who do you cut bait with? Well, everyone's saying, well, Miller's older. Well, Miller's a hell of a player.
Miller's the coach's kind of player too.
Exactly.
Don't forget that. But then also Tocchet doesn't have a lot of term. Like this is a really deep.
It's a very interesting case study. But again,
fix each other. What did you do in that room? Because for guys like us, I think about this. When this came out, and I'm like, I wonder how I would deal with this. Like I'm trying to bring these guys together to be buddies.
You're right. The only thing that I struggle with, Rhett, is information. So what is the nature of the problem? That's is it just a philosophy difference on how they approach the game? Is one hardened guy and is one sensitive? Is it that type of stuff, or is it egregious where, something happened off ice where, who knows? Again, I'm not even going to go there because, it's just, but is there something that like that you need to know the nature of the problem.
Is the bridge burned, or is it
right?
Just
Is it unrepairable, or is it like you guys are going away on a vacation for a weekend and to Vegas, we're sending you two, and you're coming back as best buddies once you squash it. And you know what I mean? Like, I think there are ways that you can do it. And Rhett, I'm the same way, because I would take it personally as a glue guy in the room
Yep.
that I wouldn't be able to
Make
match
it
them,
work.
like to
Yeah.
make it work. But I it's not. I don't think things are as simply solved nowadays with a case of beer and a barbecue. I think there's more complex. There's money involved. There's egos involved. A lot of these young athletes now have their posses, and I call it posse. It's their parents involved, their brothers and their uncles, and like there's just a group like where,
Entourage.
yeah, you've got an entourage where it's not, you're not just that young player who's 23 isn't calling his best friend going, what do I need to do? The dad's probably involved, and does he have a girlfriend or a wife who's disruptive? Like, I look at a lot of things when I look at the whole package, and it's interesting when I still once in a while a team will call and I'll do some back channeling as to like the character of players, and you'd go through a checklist, and the checklist isn't like, okay, is that guy disruptive in the room? It's like, who's attached to that person, and does he have a girlfriend that lives with him? Does he have a wife that lives with him? Does he have kids? Is
Does
his
he have a
wife
wife and a girlfriend?
Does he have both?
well, you're right. Like, and here's another thing too. Social media really affects lives now. So you're seeing, I know guys where teams have looked at players and said that person's, spouse or brother or uncle or dad is disruptive on social media because they talk about the power play. They talk about, and is it worth the hassle? It's like, so to me, there's like a checklist of stuff now that goes with today's athlete because of the phones and the amount of money guys are making and all that type of stuff. So I don't know if it's just easily squashed with a steak dinner and a nice glass of wine. I wish it would be, but again, I don't know the nature of the problem. But I'm sure fascinated because me being that former kind of glue guy in the
Yes.
room, and me and Brett, we're cut from the same cloth. Like,
that's a part of the reason you got paid to play. It wasn't
exactly.
just on your ice performance.
Sure.
No,
This
that
room
for
here
sure.
is your responsibility. Fix it.
Exactly.
That's a fascinating angle. And I look at Quinn Hughes and I'm like, what an incredible young player. Probably will have multiple Norrises when it's done. He's clearly their most important player, which is saying something on that roster with the goalie and the two forwards you've been talking about. But he's a quiet lead by example guy, and now he's the captain of this. Like, shit, that's not a good spot for that kid.
No, and he might have a different view. The hardest part is if he's caught in the middle, because he might be really close separately. He might be close separately with them. He might golf with J.T. Miller and go for dinners with Pettersson, because and that's the hardest part. You're in the middle, because if that guy's, mother, whatting to him, he's the guy in the middle. And I don't know if he's the guy that stands up and says, smarten up, you guys sort it out. Like, I feel like Iggy at some point in our dressing room, if there was a problem, him or Connie or Red or Robin or, those guys would squash it or get in your face about it. And if they didn't, I think the team was strong enough, the room was strong enough to handle any type of disagreement here or there, because not everybody got along.
No, and you don't always, you play on teams where not everybody gets along, but not to this point where it becomes out public. And maybe it is the social media and the world we live in.
It's a while, right?
The fact that, like, even you talked about the Rangers. I'm like, when's the last time you had a GM send a list of players out for trade, and all of a sudden it's public knowledge? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I almost feel like, again, I almost feel like that might have been done on purpose.
Yes.
Because you don't, I don't.
That's
I know. I know managers.
You leak that?
Yeah, I know managers that Lou. You think Lou Lamoriello's sending out a list and letting it leak to the media of who's available, who's not? And you're right. I think where we're not looking through all of this, and we should, because I want to absolve managers and players and all of this, is agents. Agents always have ulterior motives. Look at Fleury's guy there,
Walsh,
Alan Walsh. The tweet with the stab in the back and stuff. Like, That doesn't help a player. I think Hubie's got Walsh too, doesn't
he? He does. Yeah. Noted Alan Walsh enthusiast, Alan Walsh.
Right.
I'm always
Listen,
tweeting, but only about my clients, and I will not respond to any questions, but I will puff them up when they play well. Thank you for your very unbiased view of the world, Alan. Tell us about your podcast. I'm sure it's very rational and balanced.
It's funny because I met him, and I actually like him. He's a nice guy to chat with. But, and he is a great agent. But he knows where his bread is buttered. Like, that's it. Like, he fights tooth and nail for his players. I don't love that he hates Gary Bettman. Like, I don't like that he just takes runs at him all the time, because he forgets that Alan Walsh has gotten very wealthy because of the National Hockey League too, and Gary Bettman's league. So that's the only thing I would say to him is, you take shots at the league that you're literally biting the hand that feeds you. That league pays you a lot of money. So, but outside of that, I think there's agents that have leaked stuff in there too.
Sure,
that doesn't help, because they'll leak it to insiders. Insiders will put it on Twitter and all of that, and away we go. So it's fascinating. Both of those teams. And the crazy part is, both of them could make the playoffs and go on some crazy runs if they got their act together.
Yeah, these teams play to their ceilings. Like that could be your Stanley Cup final. It really could. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.